Okay, welcome to the second in the videos for the NEA for the coursework for your Geography A level. Now this is the methods section, so I'm going to take you through all the necessary components of the methods section, and then try to give you as much information about how to complete it as effectively and efficiently as possible. Okay, so we'll go through that now. So first thing, we're going to go through the different things that are needed as part of your methods section. Yeah, because if any of these are missing, it can seriously interfere with your marks. And there's not a lot of marks available here in the methods section. It's probably the most simple section. So in that respect, it's just a case of do what you need to do, and you will score fairly well. And then it's just the degree of quality that you put forward on paper that will determine how high you go in the level. Now, we're going through the step-by-step explanation of each of your methodologies. We'll go through what we mean by sampling framework. We'll go through frequency and timing. We'll go through anticipated limitations and ethical considerations. That's all the things that are needed in your methods section. But essentially, the purpose of this section is to outline the process of data collection. So if you think about where you've come from in your introduction section has basically created an investigation focus, an investigation question. And there's three sub-questions that will go into the answering of that overall question. The way that you answer those sub-questions is through data collection. So the methodology is basically taking the reader through what data collection methods are you adopting to answer those sub-questions? How are you carrying them out? Why are you carrying them out in that way? And what do you need to consider when you are carrying those methods out? Okay, so it's nice and simple. It's just here's how I'm going to answer these questions, essentially. I need to go out into the world and do some research. Yeah, so it's just that. Okay, now, first up, and I get a lot of questions on this, is the kind of explaining the step-by-step process through which you're going to collect the data. Now, I've seen very low level projects that simply just name the method. It's like, so I'm going to use ranging poles and a clinometer to gather beach profile. Done. Okay. Doesn't tell me about um, the specific steps that you need to take in that data collection methodology. Okay. So I often use the analogy of, well, how do you make a cup of tea? There's varying degrees of explanation that need to be given to make a cup of tea in a very specific way. Yeah, because what you want to be able to do is look at your method section, and when it's complete, you have to be confident that you could give your methodology section to a stranger and that they could complete the data collection in the exact same way that you did. Okay. So it's got to be that kind of level of detail. Every step needs to be accounted for. So I'll give you an example of, here's a lower level explanation of how to make a cup of tea. I boil a kettle with some water in it. It clicks off when it boils. I put a tea bag in a mug. I pour the boiling water on the tea bag. I take the tea bag out. I put some milk in. Stir it with a spoon. There you go. Okay, that's a low level. I mean, it does explain how to make a cup of tea, but it doesn't give me any of the specifics that could be given to the stranger who's going to go and make a cup of tea for you. So you need to go through things like, okay, I'm going to boil a kettle. I'm using this specific kettle because it boils the water in the most efficient way. When the kettle's boiled, I'm going to wait for 5 seconds for the steam to dissipate. I'm then going to grab a mug of this exact size. This mug works best. Here's why it works best for making a cup of tea. Then I'm going to grab a tea bag. The specific kind of tea bag that I'm going to grab is this tea bag because it's been shown that it produces the nicest flavor by a number of research bodies that have done research on tea bag flavors. I'm going to pour the boiling water over and then I'm going to leave it in there for 2 minutes exactly. Yeah, 2 minutes exactly because that allows enough brewing time for the tea to diffuse into the boiling water without it becoming stewed, let's say. Yeah, and then I'm going to remove the tea bag and place it on the side. And once doing that, I'm going to put exactly 5 milliliters of milk into the tea. And then I'm going to stir with a spoon for 5 seconds. And here's why I'm going to do 5 milliliters of milk, because again, that yields the nicest taste. Um, and then stir with a spoon for 10 seconds because it doesn't need any more than that. And then I'm going to serve the cup of tea. You've got a lower level and you've got a higher level. The higher level takes me through a lot more detail in terms of the step-by-step process by which you will carry out something. Okay, so you've got to think of that in your step-by-step guide for all of your methodologies. Now, most of the methods are described very well on numerous websites. Okay, so one of the websites that I go to every time for your methods section, if we just go through this now, the Field Studies Council website is brilliant for this, yeah, for taking you through the methods. So for any of your investigations, if I go Field Studies Council, NEA, A level, that will take you to the specific section. There we go, 16 to 18, Geography Field Studies Council. And let's say I'm doing a coasts investigation. These are probably my favorite investigations, and we're going to low energy coastlines. And I know that I'm going to be doing some kind of investigation that involves beach profile. Click on the method thing there. Right, beach profiles. I'm going to go down to that. There we go. Okay, so it will take you through the step-by-step method. There, can you see it just there? Takes you through the step-by-step method by which you will collect this data. Okay, it's very simple for the physical ones. All right, so you need to and think about any other data, any other bits of explanation that you might need for that. The other really good one that I discovered, bear with me, Barcelona Field Studies Center. It's a collection. That's not the one. Just bear with me. Okay, good. So we don't want this one specifically. There we go. And we go into fieldwork methods. There you go. So we've got other things as well, like beach profile that can be calculated like this. All right. So Field Studies Council. Field Studies Council is probably the better one for your methods. The Barcelona Field Studies thing, which I'll talk more about when we come on to the presentation thing. That is the presentation section. Sorry, that is probably better for presentation. So if I was to choose one to go for any of the methods, it would be this. Otherwise, it is just a case of Googling the methodology and thinking about like a step-by-step process. Obviously, don't copy and paste this. That's plagiarism, and you don't want to be caught for plagiarism. But it does give you a kind of starting point for thinking about that step-by-step process. So it just has to be there in many respects, that step-by-step process. And the more detailed it is, and the more you can include like images that would guide a stranger in that data collection method, the higher level your project's going to be. Okay, it's all about detail. Okay, not over explanation, but having enough detail so that the marker can give you enough marks. So give every instruction that's necessary. Is that bit for the step by step? Then you need to think about what your sampling framework is. So if your step-by-step guide is here's my method, here's how you carry out this method, your sampling framework needs to be thought of as the whereabouts am I actually going to be doing these methods and how many times am I going to carry out this method and in what specific locations and why, okay? So you can just do random, you can do systematic, stratified, cluster, convenience, purposive, snowball, quota. All of them mean different things, and it's your job essentially to think about which one of these am I going to use and why. Okay, it's very important that you get that justification in. So I'll just give you an example. One of the most common ones that I see in projects is a systematic sampling method. So let's say, okay, we look at this here. Let's say this is a road. Yeah, this might be a road, and you might take an environmental quality survey every 10 meters moving away from a town centre, let's say. Yeah, because one of your hypotheses might be that environmental quality is gets worse as you move away from the town centre because that's where regeneration has been concentrated. Okay, it's a reasonable enough hypothesis. So a systematic sampling strategy would be every 10 meters. And that's a good methodology because it kind of avoids bias. And what it does is it allows you to get a representative sample across the full width here. Now, if I was to do something like random sampling, where I would measure this, measure along here, and say, right, generate random points, they might all be clustered down here. Or there might be like 2 there and 10 up here. It wouldn't capture any of these in here. So systematic's great for a representative sample. Random would be good to sort of avoid bias. Um, so again, it's looking up what all of these different sampling frameworks actually mean. And again, you can go on the Field Studies Council. So if you type into Google Field Studies Council sampling frameworks, it's all there in terms of explaining what these are and how they can be used. These are the most common ones: random, systematic, and stratified. Convenience, purposive, snowball, and quota. Again, you're just going to have to look these up. That's part of the independent side of this NEA is you decide. Okay, and it's don't get too caught up in the whole. I need to choose the exact right one. It's all about the as long as you pick one and you justify it, that's what the marker needs to see. Okay, and part of that justification is explaining why you're not using any of the other ones as well. Yeah, so I might say I'm using systematic sampling because it's good for this. The reason I'm not using random and stratified is because yeah, so that becomes part of your justification. So that's sampling framework. So once again, we need a step-by-step explanation and you need a sampling framework. So how is it that you're going to collect the data? Now, it's a really good idea, and I'll come on to this, to present your sampling framework on a map, on a visual. But I will come back to this. Okay, so here's how your here's how this might work. So when I said present it on a map, let's say the beige underneath here is a town centre, and you've got the dots or the lines which might form the transects or the quadrats there that are overlain on the map. And you can do this using ArcGIS, which I'll put into a separate video, how to use ArcGIS for your data and for your methods and your sampling. Really useful tool, and it does go down well for the people marking projects. Yeah. So, like I've said, sampling framework is the where. The step-by-step is the how. The sampling framework is the where, and you've got to say why again. Okay. So why is very important. Justification. So if you've chosen a specific method, say why you've chosen that method. If you've chosen a specific kind of sampling framework, say why. I know I'm repeating myself here, but it's important that you hear that a number of times. Next up, we've got timing and frequency. Okay, timing and frequency. And once again, this needs to be justified. You need to say why. So if you think about step by step is how, sampling framework is where on your field site, timing and frequency is when and how many times. Okay, how many times are you going to repeat this activity? Is once enough? Yeah, you've got to do both. Okay, and you need to be precise with this. So when we say timing, it's like I will go down to the field site on this exact date at this exact time. Okay, you've got to be nice and precise, and you've got to, or between these exact times. The frequency, I will be going on this date, and this date, or I will just be going on this date. And you've got to justify that. Okay, so a very common one that I see with coasts investigations is that I'm going to be going down between this time and this time, and then I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to go down this time and this time. That might simply be a safety thing because if the tide is in, you can't do your investigation. So you have to go when the tide is low. And you can look up the tide times. So, put those into your method section, into the justification side of things when you're talking about a specific timing for your investigation. Yeah. It's no good not being able to get to your field site. That would be poor planning. Okay. So timing and frequency. And this is a good point, actually, to state that obviously everything that you're going to be writing in your method section is going to be in the future tense. It has to be future tense. I will do this. I will do that. I will go at this time. And here's why. Okay. So timing and frequency, very, very important. Okay, so like I've said before, Field Studies Council is a great resource for you. It's got most of the data collection stuff that you will need for, certainly for your physical. You might have to dig a little bit deeper for the human ones, but for your physical, absolutely, it's got those techniques. You then need a bit on anticipated limitations. So this is the fourth section. This is where you consider the challenges you might face with the data collection strategies you've chosen. Yeah, it shows that you're considering these things before you go into to the field. I've seen this quite a lot in some very successful projects that I've marked before. Um, so, it can be simple as, you've got a questionnaire, people might not want to answer it. Okay, something along those lines. Or, you've got a questionnaire and you've chosen to do a systematic sampling strategy with asking every third person that walks past you, what if that third person doesn't want to answer your question? Yeah, very simple. And then maybe come up with if that is the case, I will do this. Yeah, so anticipated limitations and what you're going to do about it. So it's a good idea at this stage to start searching for your positives and negatives of the method of data collection that you've chosen. Yeah. The other one, of course, is obviously human error, faulty equipment, that kind of thing. So you're thinking about these things ahead of time before you actually go to the field site. And then finally, you've got your ethical considerations. Let me just get my never mind. Your ethical considerations. Yeah, so things like don't litter, don't disturb ecosystems, promise anonymity to any of the people you're answering the questionnaire to, don't disrupt business activities or any other social activities. It's essentially you considering how you're going to cause as little disruption as possible as a researcher in the field. That's how you be an ethical researcher. Yeah. You'll find that between your methods, particularly in the human section, between your methods, it's probably going to be quite repetitive. So you'll probably find yourself copy and pasting your ethical considerations from one method to another method, but that's okay. There's no problem with that. Yeah. So we've got an example down there. You might be conducting some kind of species abundance and diversity assessment in sand dunes along a transect with a quadrat. It's very difficult for you to not disrupt the ecosystem, but you can be I don't know, try and find a way of saying how you're going to be as careful as possible to not disrupt the ecosystem. Yeah. And it might just be a case of, don't leave anything behind, try to remain in one place, try not to walk around too much, stay on the line as much as possible. That's going to be one of your considerations, definitely, 100%. With a questionnaire as well, it might be, you don't force the participants to answer any of your questions, promise anonymity, don't ask any questions that might be too personal as part of your questionnaire. If you're doing an EQS, consider, don't be loud and don't say, oh, this is really decayed, isn't it? You've got to be mindful of the fact that people live there. So all in all, this is what your methods sections should look like. Yeah, for me, making it kind of tabular like this makes it really easy for the person marking your methodology section to give you the marks. So I've laid it out in this table. So it's just a review basically of what everything you need per method, yeah, in your methodology section. You need a step-by-step explanation, make it detailed, stranger friendly, yeah, and justify why you chose this method. You then need a sampling framework. Where are you going to carry out this method? Have you decided where on the basis of random sampling, stratified, systematic, opportunistic, purposive, quota, whatever, yeah? Choose one, state it, justify why you've chosen this sampling framework, and as part of that justification, you can say why you haven't chosen any of the others. If you're struggling to justify it, get on Google. Why would I choose random sampling? Why would I choose stratified sampling? Why would I choose systematic sampling? This is the independent side of this coursework. You've got to start digging around. This is where you can't start looking at your teachers and saying, I don't know what to write for this. What should I write for this? Yeah, it's not like an exam. This is independent. You've then got timing and frequency. When exactly? How many times exactly? And why? Why are you going at these times? Why are you only going down once? Why are you going down twice? Why are you going down 3 times, 4 times, 5 times? Yeah, you've got to justify that. You've then got anticipated limitations, which is what challenges do you expect to experience when you're in the field? Yeah, and then your ethical considerations. How are you going to be as the least disruptive to the environment within which you are doing the research as possible? Okay, so it's this for every single method that you are doing. All right, and remember, every single method provides data that will answer the sub question. that you come up with in your introduction. So in terms of the layout, I would go sub-question at the top, all the methods that apply to that sub-question, and repeat per sub-question. All right, so that should be comprehensive enough in terms of creating your methodology section. Remember, you've got the resources that you need in terms of the websites that you can use, and then just use good old Google to research the different things that you might want to consider when you are picking your different strategies. All right, so well done. The next video is going to be data presentation and analysis specifically. Okay, so it's presenting. So once you've got the raw data, which is what your methods will give you, how do you then turn all that raw numerical data, that qualitative data, into pretty pictures and charts that will allow the reader to see any trends, patterns, anomalies, anything like that? Yeah. And then the analysis is thinking, right, I've got all this numerical data. Are there any statistically significant trends, relationships, differences that I can spot from this, and kind of put a numerical value on that? Yeah, but it will show you the significance of your data. Yeah. All right, so I'll see you in that video.